Hello and welcome to The Stack. This week we speak with Sarah Harris, editorial director of 72 magazine, part of Edward Anningfield's global platform EE72. Plus, we pay a visit to the Outdoor Recreation Archive in the library of Utah State University. And we speak with Max Meighen from the food title Serviette. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show talking about 72 magazine, the beautiful quarterly published by Edward Anningfield's media platform EE72. They launched this year with much fanfare, featuring none other than Julia Roberts on the cover. And the elegant issue 2 is out this week. To tell us about the title and its reception, it was a pleasure to welcome their editorial director, Sarah Harris, to the studio.
I was at Vogue for a very long time, 20 years or so. And Edward came in for the last 6 years, basically, of when I was there. And we met. I mean, I sort of knew him a bit in the industry and, seen him around at events and parties and shows and various things. So obviously I knew of him and I knew him a bit, but not particularly well. Then we met as he was coming in as the new editor of Vogue. In our first meeting, I had to tell him that I was pregnant and I would be off very soon on my leave. And he was great about it. And anyway, I worked with him for his first 3 weeks of him being there, basically, to begin with. And then I went off on my maternity leave. And we stayed in touch the whole time. And before I left, he said, when you come back, will you come back as my deputy editor? Which is kind of amazing for a boss to say to you, right? As you're about to sort of take some time off, to offer you that kind of position. At the time, I was fashion features director. And I said, yes, of course, I would love to. And so anyway, I came back and then we worked together for however long it was, 5.5 years or so.
Huge level of trust there as well, right?
Yeah, I think so. But I think that's Edward for you. And I think he's incredibly generous. There's no ego with Edward. I always say that. And I just think he's, even in the way he works, it's never sort of only his ideas or his way. He's very collaborative in the way he works. And it's across the board. He wants ideas from assistants to editors to senior editors. He wants to hear from everyone and he wants everyone's opinion. And yeah, he's very generous in that way.
Well, I want to talk about EE72. So there was a lot of course expectation in the industry, readers, fashion lovers or print lovers. What's going to happen? What's going to be the project? Of course, the first issue came out, which was great. I mean, Julia on the cover. I mean, that's how you start things, right? With
Yeah,
Julia
it was
Roberts.
amazing. And actually, we landed on Julia very early on in the process. I think, she's a great friend of Edward's, and I think she really wanted to support him in his next venture. So Julia was a no-brainer. It happened very quickly.
And weirdly enough, I think she's quite selective which magazine she's on the cover, right? I mean, she's one of the most popular names out there, but...
Yeah, she is. She's incredibly selective. So I think also to that end, it was a real honor to have her and for her to want to do it. Yeah.
But perhaps most importantly, there is an issue 2, which we love. And I think that's kind of the magazine evolves a little bit. How would you compare issue 1 to 2 now?
I think the first issue, we really came out of the gates, sort of, firing on all cylinders. And I think the first issue was very much a kind of, it was very starry. It was very celebrity driven. I think that was a real kind of muscle flex for that, to be honest. And why not? It said was a dress book and it said, his friends and network. And I think issue 2 perhaps leans into other pillars of 72. We've gone pretty big on arts and culture in this issue. We did a great story on the 4 Turner Prize nominees. So we did a big story on those artists. And we did another story on Danielle McKinney, who's an artist that I love, interviewed by Tiffany Howell, who's an interior designer. So yeah, I do think there is definitely a point of difference between the first and the second issues, I think. But still many of the same stories that will be sort of irregular regulars. So we have a story called Shapeshifter, which sort of chronicles someone's career. The first issue, we profiled Jonathan Anderson. And in this issue, we have Nina Kristen, the shoe designer. And for the first issue, we have a feature called MySpace, which took shape as sort of going into 11 people's homes and profiling them in their favorite space. Everyone from Oprah to Gwyneth Paltrow to Pharrell, Paloma Alcessa, 11 big starry names. And in this issue, we've just focused on Kristen McMenemy at home, which is a great sort of chaotic kind of, you really get a look into her mind and her vision and how she lives. And she's wearing all of her own clothes in the shoot as well.
How do you approach fashion in 72 compared to, let's say, your time at Vogue or perhaps in other titles as well? Is there a particular...
Well, it's interesting because we don't have any advertisers in the first or the second issue. You know, it's very much about creativity first. And so that has been so nice in terms of not having to shoot a whole list of advertisers, which, you know, is how publishing generally works. You have a list of advertisers and you have to tick them off and, you know, give this one a cover and make sure this one's looked after. And so that has been really freeing. And again, it's just felt really creative to shoot who you want, where you want, when you want.
Well, talking about who you shot, I mean, I am mesmerized by the cover. I know there are two covers, which we're going to talk about. Yeah. And it's so beautiful. It is, what's the name of the model? Aju Samuel.
Yeah.
What a fantastic cover.
Yeah, she's great. And, you know, Edward and I both admired her for some time. She's the face of the Saint Laurent campaigns. And I just think, yeah, there's something very striking about her. And I think when you have such a kind of real crop close-up of her face like that, it's sort of even more mesmerizing. And I think, yeah, it's certainly striking.
And it is a double cover as well. And the other one, it is different, but for somehow they kind of match together as well.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful photograph by Nick Knight as well, right?
Who celebrates 25 years of Show Studio.
So that's 72 for you. There's the legacy and there's the newcomers as well. It's a good mix.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also, you know, we're just keen to kind of push other ideas of what a cover can be and what a cover can look like. And, you know, I think Edward is one of the masters of that, if not the master, you know, from his time at Vogue. All those covers that we did that were sort of, you know, they really questioned who can be on a cover. You know, during COVID, we did the sort of frontline workers. We had an NHS nurse, we had a tube driver, postal worker. And then another issue during COVID, we had a series of artists, each submitted a work, a landscape. So I think it's, you know, the idea of just not being kind of penned in by what you think a magazine should look like and or who should be on the cover.
You can push things forward as well. And I was going to ask you and Edward, do you value print then still? Because it's interesting because there was some rumors before, Edward, you know, we didn't know what he was going to do. Is he going to be just digital? I was concerned because I was like, I want something in print, but that's definitely not the case.
You know, it's been nice because I think there's been so much excitement around this print magazine and so much goodwill around it too. Like, I think people have really, you know, wanted something beautiful and wanted, you know, and I do still think there's a place for print. And of course, digital has changed things and, you know, the pace is faster. But I still think print matters. And I just think, you know, it's all about great storytelling. And I think with print, it needs to feel substantial and it needs to feel almost collectible. It needs to be what you're putting in print, I think, needs to feel the worth of the paper that it's on. You know, it needs to hold up.
I agree. I want to talk about some of the highlights of issue 2. And we were talking before, I love the beauty pages. I think they feel very fresh and very interesting as well. I wonder if you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, we were looking at beauty. We worked with Sarah Brown, who is a great beauty editor, journalist, consultant, sort of amazing. I met her years ago at American Vogue, actually, when I was writing a bit for US Vogue. And when we started talking about beauty and the beauty pages, I went to her first and, you know, sort of asked her how she might imagine them and what she might like to do. And she's great. She's a pro. So yes, in this issue, she did a piece about facelifts, which of course,
we're all talking
everyone
about
seems to be having a facelift.
Yeah. Or talking about it, at least.
Or talking about it, yeah. So I think the title is kind of fun. I think it's called, If You're Not Having a Facelift, Are You Even Living? But yeah, she really did a deep dive on the facelift, who to go to, how to have it done, what to have, when to have it, how much to pay. but it's a great read. I highly recommend that piece. And also when it came to sort of beauty product pages, I think we've worked so long on those at Vogue, and it's, you take still life of the lipstick and you do still life pages. But I don't know, there was something that just seemed so kind of pedestrian about approaching beauty in that way. And so our kind of adaptation of that is called The Price of Beauty. And it's basically, it's a list of all the products that we know and love and rate, but also with a few new products as well thrown in there. And it's everything from, The Price of Beauty. It can be a glass of water for $0 for hydration, right up to a kind of an expensive perfume or an expensive treatment.
One thing that I just thought about it, you mentioned the muscle flexing at issue 1. And here, the opposite is happening because... Listen, by the end, there's an amazing photo shoot. There's Kristen Stewart, there's Sigourney Weaver, there's Emma Darcy, there's all this kind of, top Hollywood names, Tiana Taylor, which probably will get an Oscar nomination. Yeah. And it's just there, Then
I know, and it's funny because I think most people will look at that portfolio and think, oh my God, but there are like so many covers in here. Like any one of these could almost be a cover. That was a really fun portfolio to work on. Dina Giannini and Norman worked on that together. And it was shot across LA and London and I think New York. Yeah, it was a fun one. But there are some big names in there.
Yes. And especially in this Oscar season. I mean, you got quite a few of them.
Exactly.
Sarah, are you, not just talking about 72, are you excited about fashion next year? Because this year we had so many changes, in designers and all the top brands. But I think next year things will consolidate and then we're going to have a better kind of take on that, right?
I mean, I'm definitely excited to see, how all those new designers and new sort of placements are gonna pan out. I'm especially excited for Maciej Blazy at Chanel. I think I love the show he just did in New York.
So joyful, no? The 2 shows that I've seen so far, I don't know, there was something quite joyful.
And it feels real, and it's clothes you want to wear and buy and live in. Louise Trotter, I think, is doing a great job at Bottega. I love what she's doing. But yes, there's been so many exciting new appointments. I mean, I don't remember a time before where we've had sort of quite such a kind of turnaround of talent at new houses. There's a lot to be excited about.
And finally, just a reminder. So 72 is actually a quarterly title, right?
It's a quarterly.
So I'm sure you're already working on the next one.
Yeah, it's funny. Everyone's like,
it's not a biannual.
It must be so nice to go from a monthly to a quarterly. And it's like, well, yeah, you would think that. But we're a tiny team. Vogue, you had a team of sort of 40, 60 people. On this, there's like 10 of us putting it together. It's small. We have contributors and we have freelance writers, but the core team is very tight. And, we're about 220 pages of editorial.
No ads.
Which is a lot. No ads. Yeah, no ads in issue 1 or issue 2.
Could that change potentially, or
potentially? I think the strategy is that Edward and Akua don't want to sell single page ads or just a double page ad. I think we're looking to work with brands in a sort of bigger, more holistic way in terms of a bigger partnership. That might be us helping them create a zine. It might be us co-hosting an event for them. It might be and if as part of that partnership they would like us to run a bank of 6 ads or so, then that's something we can look at. But in terms of the sort of the old print model of selling single page ads, no.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Issue 2 of 72 is out now. For more information, go to ee72.com. And now we head to Utah, more specifically to the Outdoor Recreation Archive in the library of Utah State University. The archive holds more than 10,000 items that chart the development of outdoor equipment and clothing. Writer Gregory Scruggs paid them a visit for Monocle's December-January issue, so make sure to buy it. But for some extra content, I had the pleasure to also speak with their co-creator, Chase Anderson.
I work for Utah State University, and my full-time role is with the Outdoor Product Design and Development Program, which is a 4-year undergraduate bachelor's degree focused on teaching students how to design and develop sports and outdoor products. In 2017, I got connected with someone over in the university library, where our university archive is located. we came together to create the Outdoor Recreation Archive, which is, to our knowledge, the world's largest collection of historic outdoor gear catalogs, magazines, documents, photographs, sketchbooks, and much, much more. And so since 2017, I've been involved in the development of that project, marketing and promotion, finding new materials, and making the archive more accessible to more people around the world.
And I think it's, great timing that we have an archive like this because, Chase, tell me about your impressions, but I think people and brands as well, they are very interested in the outdoors, how to look good on the outdoors, which clothes should they wear, all those kind of beautiful materials from the past. So I think it's a vital role you play there, right?
I think so. And I think just generally, whether it's outdoor, fashion, other aspects of design, I think there's an interest in archives, a growing interest, and an interest in print material. I think we're inundated with imagery that we see on our phones and screens. The algorithm feeds us, and there's something about going to an archive, flipping through catalogs, magazines like we have here at the university, and seeing imagery that isn't recycled online and fed to us. We're discovering it and finding it rather than the other way around. So I think that's something that's really appealed to people who have visited the collection and is really exciting for me is, we've gained a lot of traction posting some of this imagery on Instagram. That's where most people know us from. But what's really exciting is when people discover the Instagram account, they come to this physical place and they find imagery they've never seen before, because it's never been online.
So that's what I was going to ask. I know you guys have a great online presence. A lot of people, perhaps they are not, in the US, but people can go and visit. So if they are really keen to visit, they could. If they are in Utah, they wanted to do some research there. How does that work?
Yeah, so we host people from all over the world. I know it's maybe not the most convenient for many of our fans, but it's certainly worth the trip. And there's so much more to do when you come to Utah, when you come and visit. But yeah, we'll have brands, designers, researchers contact us, typically through social media, and ask to come and visit. The university library and the archives, it's a public resource. And so they have open hours from 10 to 4 weekdays. People will schedule times to come and visit with us. We can curate an experience or pull specific materials based off of interest. And we frequently have brands who come out multiple times a year just to do design research, to get inspiration, to meet together with their teams. But we've had designers and brands as far as Tokyo make a dedicated trip to come to Utah to visit the archive. So it's well worth the trip.
Doesn't surprise me from Tokyo because they do like their outdoor gear there and very cool ones, right?
Absolutely. We even had the opportunity, we worked with Shigeru Kaneko, who's the chief buyer of Beams Plus, and he's a collector of vintage apparel and gear. He's a collection of over 100 down garments himself, and Beams actually hosted us to put together an exhibit with them showcasing the history of outdoor gear and apparel. There was a huge amount of interest there. So yeah, definitely a lot of interest in Japan.
Give us an idea of the size. You have 10,000 plus items, right? That's a lot.
So this is where it would be helpful to have an archivist in the conversation because he could give us a better idea of the square footage. In the Monocle article, there's some good visuals of the movable shelving units that we have in the space. And I think there's a photo of me standing next to some of the shelving units where the outdoor materials are. There's hundreds of those shelving units, and I'm standing next to 4. And those are just the 4 outdoor recreation archive materials. So there's hundreds of thousands of documents in the collection that are not related to the Outdoor Recreation Archive. So we're a very small part of a larger university collection, but this collection gets so much interest and use globally, more than a lot of the items in the collection. Most of the other items are local or regional or specific to the history of Utah or in our local area, and ours is a very global collection and has a lot of global interest.
One particular item, or items I should say, that I am fascinated is catalogs, because I think, unfortunately today we don't have those catalogs anymore. And if we do, they are not perhaps as beautiful and detailed. I mean, it looks like it's a proper editorial fashion shoot, or I mean, you can see the investment in that, right? I think they are definitely one of my favorites. So tell us, I'm sure you have plenty of catalogs, as people can see that on the Monocle article as well.
We have over 10,000 catalogs and magazines in the collection. Catalogs is really what we're known for. It's how we started. We got an initial donation of about 1,200 catalogs. And the idea behind that was, let's use those catalogs as a teaching tool to educate these up-and-coming outdoor product design students. We thought it would be a disservice to these design students if they go and work for Patagonia or the North Face or these iconic brands if they don't know their history. So we initially collected catalogs as a teaching tool to help educate the students on the evolution of product design within the outdoor space, who the key players, products, innovations are, and then put those materials on Instagram and quickly discovered there was a much broader audience. But yeah, catalogs are our bread and butter. That's where it all started.
And what periods do you have in the archive? Are you open-minded? Would you have something perhaps a little bit more recent, or are you focused in certain decades?
Yeah, Clint and I we love to say that we take and collect people's junk mail. So we even take things out of our own mailboxes, catalogs that are still being produced, which there still are some from certain brands. We'll put those catalogs right into the archive. There really is no limit to, the only limit to how far we collect is what has been produced. But our oldest item is from 1900 from the David T. Abercrombie Company, which was David Abercrombie's company before he met Ezra Fitch of Abercrombie and Fitch. It was a camping equipment brand. So yeah, we'll take items earlier than that. We'll take items that reach our mailboxes this year and next year. The bigger challenge I think we face is the scope of the collection. What types of outdoor activities will we or won't we collect? When you say outdoor means a lot of different things to different people. So initially the collection focused on the core outdoor activities of the 60s and 70s in the US because that's what we had access to. But the scope has broadened since then. So we will collect catalogs, magazines, documents from brands and individuals internationally. We have a growing collection of catalogs and magazines from Japan, from the UK, from Europe. And then the outdoor activities we do, I think we've kind of put some limitations on ourselves. It's a lot of human-powered outdoor activities, so we haven't collected a lot in the motorized outdoor sports. There's, hunting and fishing is a growing area for us, and we'd love to get more into that. There's certain sports like mountain biking or trail running that we have some materials, but we'd love to grow. But the more you dig into the outdoor activities, the more you realize there's a lot of different ways that people get out and recreate. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
Why do you feel print and the outdoors are so interconnected? And I ask this not just because you have, for example, this amazing archive, but I see lots of new and great magazines as well being launched about this topic. And some of them, you can see that they look a little bit vintage. They look like they could have been made in the 60s, for example. So there is a certain appreciation towards that.
It's a great question. I've never really considered why the revival and what goes into that. I think print has been a very important component of the outdoor industry, the growth of the outdoor industry, the story of outdoors. Print was the connection that many people had to the products. I mean, that's similar with other industries, I'm sure, is you would buy items through catalogs and that was your connection. So print is pretty intertwined with how people got access to outdoor products. Even going back to the Abercrombie and Fitch days, you'd receive a catalog that was more of a book, with all the pricing and products. So I think print is the way that people connected to the gear and the storytelling as well. There's magazines that we have in the collection, including Summit Magazine, which is now Summit Journal.
Yes.
One of those magazines that's been revived. In that magazine, which has a really amazing story, Helen Kilness and Gene Crenshaw started the magazine in 1955. They even used their initials when they published the magazine initially because they were afraid that as climbers and women in the climbing industry, they wouldn't be taken seriously. So they used their initials in a male-dominated sport. that magazine was the launching pad for brands like the North Face and Chenard Equipment and then Patagonia. Some of the earliest advertising for some of these brands appears in Summit magazine. There are a lot of connection points between the outdoor industry and print, and I think some of that carries forward to today. And it's really exciting to see some of these revived publications, Mountain Gazette, Summit Journal, as well as new publications. I know Field Mag is doing amazing work on the print side.
All featured
really
here on the stack. We like the outdoors as well. Do you have any personal favorites from the collection? I mean, I know it's a hard question, but maybe not personal favorites, but something interesting that perhaps you like to tease our listeners.
Yeah, I'll share a couple because there's so many. I love the big brands, the North Face, Patagonia. Their catalogs are always the most popular as well when I share them on social media. But I really love the brands you've never heard of before, the brands that I was not familiar with before I got into this project. One of which is Banana Equipment. It was an outdoor company started in Colorado in the 70s, one of the earliest companies to use Gore-Tex, for example. It was that company and a couple others in the US that were using Gore-Tex and bringing that material to the market. We got in contact with one of their co-founders, Nancy Grimes, and she donated a scrapbook of the entire company history. And that included some of their earliest catalogs, one of which was one of, I think, 5,000 that it looks like was hand-drawn and then photocopied and sent around the country to different outdoor retailers. And that's how their company really got started, and they got their initial orders placed. But it's one of those companies that has a lot of character. One of the co-founders liked bananas, and so that's why they named the company Banana Equipment. So, it just shows the personality, the character, the quirkiness of outdoor companies at that time. It's a lesson for me that the industry was built by real people who just loved getting outside and making stuff and wanted to make better products. And it's some of these small companies that brought some of the innovations that we're familiar with today, Gore-Tex or, other materials or innovations. It's some of these small companies that brought forward some of these innovations that we take for granted today. So that's one that I really love. And it's really special because I just don't know if we would ever find another Banana Equipment catalog. I don't think we would be able to find that original catalog really anywhere else. So it's extra special.
And I want to ask, looking ahead for next year, I know you guys published a book already before, right? Do you plan to do more, like something in print or even some sort of merchandising as well? Because I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest towards that.
We published a book with our friends at Thames and Hudson
fairly recently
out of London. Yes, in May, that book came out, and we're very happy with how it turned out. So we were very excited to do that. That was not something that was ever on our radar, the possibility of producing a book that highlights, celebrates, showcases catalog imagery and celebrates print. We would love to do more. In the near term, I know we've collaborated a number of times with print publications that are looking to run stories on different topics from the archive. So we're always happy to work with creators and editors who are looking to tell stories about what's in the collection. We've been fortunate enough to work with the folks from Popeye magazine on a story, but also some online stories that feature stories from the collection, where we've been able to talk about specific catalogs or specific brands. So we've had a recurring segment on Popeye online, which has been really fun. And then we've been doing events. We've got quite a few events coming up, including this weekend in New York. But no immediate plans for more print, but I could see that in our future at some point again. We would love the opportunity to continue to do more to showcase print and the materials in the collection.
Thank you very much, Chase Anderson there, co-creator of the Outdoor Recreation Archive. And for more information on that, go to outdoorrecreationarchive.com. And now to the world of food. Serviette is a beautiful title founded by former chef and brewer Max Meighen, who recently relocated from Toronto to Copenhagen. Max stopped by Midori House to tell us about his relocation and also a bit more about issue 7 of Serviette, an exploration of food as a ritual.
The restaurant came first. I worked as a chef, as a brewer, spent time in butcher shops, did a bit of catering. And after living in the UK in my early 20s, I moved back to Canada, and opening a restaurant had always been in the back of my mind, something I really had wanted to do. And after about 2 or 3 years of thinking about the plan and coming together with investors and partners, I was able to open a restaurant in the summer of 2019, which was not great timing in retrospect. But the restaurant opened that summer, and the magazine came out of the restaurant in the sense that we had a newsletter at the restaurant, which sort of pulled back the curtain a little bit on everything we were doing at the restaurant. It was called Aveling in the east end of Toronto. We were, still is, a restaurant, brewery, and urban farm. And the idea was that all three of those departments worked very closely together, and the newsletter was about trying to tell people about the innovation, research, the sort of experiments we were doing, the fun we were having behind the scenes, and how that showed up on the plate and in the glass. And when the pandemic kind of made all that go away, I looked for another way to stay connected to the world of food, how food communicates ideas really beautifully. And I guess because I have a habit of making things difficult on myself, opening restaurants, I decided to start a print publication, print first, print only. The idea of a newsletter was very briefly discussed, but it really was. Magazine felt like the right vehicle to explore these ideas on a wider scale than we were doing at the restaurant.
And it resonated. I mean, we have issue 7 now. It's a very respected magazine, won a lot of awards. And I have to say, one thing that I love about Serviette is it's creative. I mean, starting with the covers, it feels like art in a way as well, right? Is that what you wanted? It's not just another food title, but something different perhaps as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The covers have always been very special to me, and starting from the very first one that had almost a kind of Rococo Renaissance sort of painterly feel to it, and they've been very sculptural and artistic ever since. But really the magazine, I mean, we are a food magazine, but I almost sort of describe it more as an arts and culture, design, urbanism, architecture publication, but all through the lens of food and drink. And so the covers sort of reflect how food really is just, it's a vehicle for ideas, a vehicle for important conversations. To me, there's no better way to understand, explore, and celebrate everything important in the world. And the covers and really the magazine as a whole, the magazine as a kind of cultural platform really embodies that point of view.
I love the element of surprise. So if for issue 7, the theme is food is ritual. I mean, of course, you could expect that it's going to be perhaps a very serious issue, talking about the rituals. There are many serious rituals around, but I think you have some fun with it as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We try and strike a nice balance between impactful, important reporting and the lighter side of the topic. It's more fun to do it that way. It's exciting, but also I think it lends itself to exploring food in unexpected ways and keeps the content fresh and keeps both our contributors engaged and coming back to us, and also hopefully the readers.
Can you tell us some of the highlights for issue 7? I mean, I hope you mentioned the fortune teller. I think that's such an interesting story.
Absolutely. The fortune teller really is a beautiful Serviette story in many ways. We were approached by a contributor that we had never heard of, but had heard of us, who pitched us an idea of basically just telling the world about the only tyromancer. Tyromancer is a fortune teller that uses cheese to look into your future, to sort of literally, metaphorically read the tea leaves, much the same way you do with maybe coffee grounds in Turkey and that region. So tyromancy it's a long-standing tradition, and if you go back in the history books, there's constant mention of needing to go to the tyromancer, taking your cheese from the dairy and heading straight to the tyromancer, understanding what lay ahead for you. So the sort of combination of history, of current cultural practice, of fun, of intrigue, it all comes together in a wedge of cheese, and that is Serviette to its core. And so we were fortunate enough, we had a launch event for this most recent issue in Toronto, and while the tyromancer is based in Chicago, we did Zoom her into the event, and so people were able to go up to a large altar that we built completely out of cheese and pick at random, sort of let the fates guide their hand, and they picked some cheeses and went into a little side room and had 10 minutes with this fortune teller who would look into the cheese and tell them what lay ahead.
I'm very interested. I'll get her contact after the interview. I was going to ask, so what about, what's your food ritual in that sense? I mean, I'm sure you have many, but perhaps you can pick one.
I think my most treasured food ritual is really taking myself out to dinner. Some people feel there's a bit of a stigma to dining alone. To me, it's as important as exercise. It's sort of a moment to reflect, to clear my head, to sit in a setting that I have spent my entire professional career thinking about and working in and trying to improve and trying to do in interesting ways. I always sit at the bar. I always ask for a bar seat. To me, that's the only place to dine in a restaurant.
There's more energy when you're at the bar.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
There is something.
And you get to talk to the bartenders. It's where regulars eat. It's where staff eat. It's where, you think you're just sort of shuffled off, stashed at the bar to get you out of the way, but really it's where all the action is. And that little ritual of walking up to the host and saying, "One for the bar, please." And it's those moments, those nights are really special to me.
I think even when you order perhaps the same dish in a restaurant, that's kind of a ritual as well, right?
Yeah.
I do that a lot. I think that's my ritual. I think I'm a bit repetitive with what I order. But...
Well, great restaurants around the world are built on their signature dishes. And what else are those but rituals for both the kitchens and the diners alike?
And the magazine is printed in Canada. You're Canadian, of course. It was found there. But you had a recent move to another town.
I did, yes. I was speaking a little bit in the past tense about the restaurant. It still exists. It continues. But I recently sold the restaurant. Mm-hmm. So thinking about where I wanted to be, where the evolution of the magazine was going to take me, I decided to relocate to Copenhagen. It's a very exciting time. It's all still very fresh. I just got there in October. And, the reason I chose Copenhagen was I was there in May for a symposium put on by NOMA and their sort of parallel advocacy organization called MAD. And it really struck me how many conversations there are happening in Copenhagen right now around food, not only around sort of just restaurants and restaurant culture, but the business of food, the culture of food, what it means for a place, a city like Copenhagen. I mean, gastrodiplomacy sort of in its modern form was kind of... somebody may correct me on this, but I think it really was made in Copenhagen over the last 20 years. And that is an approach that other cities and other governments are taking around the world. And so based on where the energy of the magazine lay, where our audiences were sort of putting up their hands and identifying themselves, where the conversations were happening, that's all drawn me to Denmark. And I'm really excited to be there, yeah.
It's a great pick. And so I was going to ask you as well, from the readers of Serviette so far, I know you sell the magazine, of course, outside Canada, you sell here in the UK, many other countries. Did you notice that there was perhaps a strong market here in Europe, not just in Denmark, but perhaps around in Europe?
Absolutely, yeah. We've had a strong response in Lisbon, a few different cities in Germany. Italy has been a good market for us, as has Denmark. The UK, I think, just our distributors based here. Obviously, with the English language connection, the UK has always been our biggest foreign market. But the connectivity, the sort of sense of unique conversations and forward-thinking conversations and collective responsibility, those touch points of European society that are still holding on. There's a lot of parallels to Serviette and how we try to move beyond, we try to think outside of just the regular food journalism that covers restaurant openings or high-profile chefs or what the sort of latest trend is. It's really one level up, one layer up, one sort of level of complexity. And those, it felt as though, a lot more people were having those conversations here.
Another story actually I really enjoyed at issue 7, maybe because I could relate to that, is, I don't know, maybe kind of a Latin American thing that when you go to a restaurant and then the last hour you just gossip a little bit. You have your sobremesa and I love that, I think that's that's a ritual as well, right?
Absolutely. And I think, we maintain a strong roster, a strong connection to Canadian writers. And that piece about sobremesa was written by an immigrant to Canada, by somebody who has found it difficult at times to bring that ritual to the Canadian context, where gossip is seen as something a little bit lurid, a little bit sort of to be hidden away, whereas for much of the rest of the world, it is a very natural part of life. It's how you catch up. It's how you stay, up to date with what's going on. And so, again, that's the sort of the beauty of everyday life, the sort of the practice of the art of everyday life happening around and through food.
Oh, and the worst thing, I don't know, it's happening quite a lot among my friends and people that I know. People saying, oh, at the end, after the main meal, say, oh, no one wants dessert, right? Let's get out of here. I'm like, no, I want dessert.
Yeah,
Stop
stay.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Where do we have to go? We don't just come on.
Exactly. Yeah. Looking ahead for 2026, are you excited? Well, you are in a new city, so I think, it's the beginning of everything. But are you excited for Serviette? Anything exciting you can tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots on the horizon to be excited about with not only the move, but just how the magazine is growing. The team, some of which is based back in Canada, some of which is here in Europe, are really starting to think about the title as a brand. The print product, the magazine, will always exist at the heart of that. A big part of my new responsibilities, my new role, my new sort of day-to-day is having a closer connection with retailers across the continent, trying to find those that want to have a closer connection, those that may want to host events, try to work with them to display or merchandise the magazine in a different way. We're looking at hosting and putting on our own unique Serviette-led events. There's one that's in the works. I don't know how much detail I can get into, but hopefully we'll have one in Milan in March, as well as one in Amsterdam in May. And we're looking outwards as well to see if other brands want to get involved to collaborative events. There's the possibility of merchandise. There's the possibility of taking the Serviette point of view and collaborating with other people that want to develop new food and beverage concepts. It really is turning into, as I say, much more of a platform, and that's super exciting, and I can't wait to see what may come.
Thank you, Max. Issue 7 of Serviette is out now. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Dewars. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fp@monocle.com. And remember, we're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, you can always listen again at monocle.com and subscribe to The Stack on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.